All right, so let's get craggy, Anthony. Why don't you start the show formally and let's
All
do
right.
it.
Anthony Angelillo, branch manager over here with Paramount Residential Mortgage Group, CEO, founder of Tag Team Nation Marketing Tech Company, top originator for many years, and co-host of Damage Control. And I'm excited to have Alex on this show, man. I'm pumped to ask questions, and I know you're into fitness because I follow you as well, man. So this is gonna be a good show.
Cool.
Amazing. Hi, everyone. Melinda Grimaldi, real estate and title attorney, Grimaldi Law Firm, and the Closers Title Insurance Company. And we are excited to talk to Alex today. You know, you could probably talk about so many things. And I've heard you speak. I actually heard you speak on the Legends and Millennial panel. I'm like, wow, this guy is for real, because you were dropping books and really good tips. And I thought to myself, he would be, you know, and then then you moved. So we never got you on the show. And I'm like, we can still, not everything's virtual anyways, right? So you left Florida. So why don't you introduce yourselves for those of you that, for those of our followers that don't know you, and let them know what you're doing these days.
Cool. All right. So I'm Alex Vidal. I am a regional vice president for Coldwell Banker, the largest real estate company in the world in Dallas, Fort Worth. I oversee 10 offices and about 1,000 agents. Formerly a Miami boy, born and raised. I lived in Davie, prior to that Aventura, and I was the president of a company called Related ISG International Realty, which was a company co-owned by the Related Group and ISG. And let me see, so I'm 43, been in real estate since I'm 19, worked with Kai's, Prudential, California, Colorado, Florida, Texas. So been around the block a little bit.
Awesome. I love that. So a lot of what you're doing these days, I see, is coaching your agents. I'm sure you always kind of had that. I think as a broker, you should be doing that anyways, but yeah. I see you do a lot of that. So how do you, I guess, like in terms of, you know, how you teach your agents, what's the first thing that they gotta, you know, what's the first thing you want them to know? What's the first thing you want them to do?
Well, it's not that what necessarily what I want them to do. It's more about what they want to do. And you kind of figure out, so I kind of do two different ways of coaching. I can do one-off coaching sessions to where, you know, I've done over 500, you know, one-on-one coaching sessions this year. And I also do group coaching. I've graduated. I just recently graduated 120 agents out of group coaching, and I have 142 in group coaching now. And they kind of follow along the same path. Obviously, the group coaching is an 8-session group coaching program that we do. That's a lot more intensive, right? But ultimately, what you figure out is if you were to ask an agent 2 questions, what's one objective you want to accomplish this year? Forget sales volume, income, number of transactions. Just give me something you want to do. Get more listings, work with more buyers, increase your average sales price, start a farm area, start a podcast, you know, whatever. What is it? 99% of them tell you that they want to get listings, right? Especially in a market like today where you're in a multiple offer situation, et cetera. But then you ask them what their biggest challenge is, and it's, you know, there are myriad of different reasons what they give themselves as to why they don't get it. So then you kind of walk them down this path, and really it boils down to one thing. And this is where the group coaching kind of ties in. You figure out that these agents do all these transactions. They do a great job, right? They get 20 transactions a year, 30, 40, 50. A lot of it is with their sphere of influence. You know, typically 30 to 50% of it is on the listing side of things. And then you start asking them kind of like the nitty gritty about their SOI, their database. So a lot of their business comes from their database, supposedly. Cool. So let me ask you a question. So, let me ask you, Melinda, how many people do you know on a first name basis where if you call them right now, they literally answered the phone and said, "Hey, Melinda, what's up?" Right? Or you said, "Hey, it's Melinda from so-and-so. Hey, Melinda, what's up? How you doing?" And they know who you are. And they'll give you a number, 100, 200, 300. They're always wrong in their number. They either shoot really high or they shoot really low. And that already tells me right there that they don't have their database in place. And that's kind of where this is going. And by the way, I want to preface everything I'm going to share with you is not rocket science. There's no magic pill. The hardest, easiest thing to do is what I'm going to share with you, right? You don't have to pay a coach $1,000 a month. That's BS. And so you start walking them through, you're like, all right, Melinda, so you know 100 people. For those 100 people, how many do you have their email address for? Oh, I got all their email addresses. Cool. How many do you have their home address for? Some. Okay. How many of those do you follow on social media? Oh, I follow them all on social media. All right, cool. So then I literally call this my dagger question. And I'm like, all right, Melinda, you live in Davie. I'm your friend. I own the local CrossFit gym in Davie, right? And you as a listing agent, all of a sudden go and you take a listing in Aventura. How do I, as your friend who lives in Davie, who owns a local CrossFit gym, know that you took this listing in Aventura? And across the board, literally, with the exception of one agent out of hundreds, one agent, with the exception of one, they tell me either you wouldn't know, or maybe you'd see it on social media. And then you're like, okay, so I'm your sphere of influence. There's 65,000 realtors in Dade and Broward County. At least when I left, there's probably more now. And the only way in which you're telling me, someone in your sphere, that you're a performer in real estate, taking listings, putting them under contract and closing them, is Facebook, Instagram. And they're like, yeah. And then I start sharing them stories. Well, like, my wife doesn't see half the stuff I post. Not because she doesn't follow me, she does. It's just the algorithm doesn't put it in front of her, to show me. So that's one big unlock that we've been able to coach our agents on, is how do you even gather that information to begin with? Like, how do you reach out to your sphere and not be that realtor that you're asking for the business? Because I think, sorry, I'm coffeeed up right now, so I apologize if I'm rambling. So coffee
Oh
up.
man, that's good.
No, do it.
But what do most real estate coaches teach their agents? Call your sphere of influence. And many years ago, it was, who do you know, or do you know of anyone that may be interested in buying or selling real estate? And they're like, no, don't ask that question anymore, because that's a yes or no question. You can't ask yes or no questions. Ask them, who do you know? Because then it's going to get their mind thinking they know somebody from church or the gym or from work that's doing something. It's like, that's a bunch of BS, man. So what we do is we teach our agents on how to have genuine conversations with their sphere. If you literally reach out to your sphere of influence, and if you, and you talked to Melinda, you referenced the book, Never Split the Difference. I've read this book probably 4 times now. It's a game changer. If you genuinely ask your sphere of influence, how are you doing? Okay. Right now, you have people that are getting married, getting divorced, having babies, kids moving in, kids moving out, job loss, job relocation, job promotions, deaths in the family. Like, there's all this stuff going on. So they're going to tell you, man, I'm crushing it right now. Or, hey, I'm having a hard time. Yeah, we're going through some stuff. It's okay. Sounds like you're going. Then you label it. Sounds like you're going through some stuff. Sounds like you're doing amazing at work, and you follow that up with what's going on. They're going to tell you, hey, we're having a baby. Oh my God, dude, you're going to need a bigger house. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Job loss. Oh my God, man, I'm so sorry to hear that. But you know what? A lot of people have lost their job and it's completely turned around for them. You probably have a shit ton of equity in your house, by the way. Do you want to talk about it? Death in the family. Oh my God, yeah. This is one of the reasons why I'm even following up with people, just to check in on them. I'm sorry to hear that. If you have any questions on probate or how that works or anything, hey, just know that I'm here. And what we're finding is that our agents, by having these genuine conversations, are now being able to engage their sphere of influence.
You're acting as a resource.
Correct. And you're hearing, you don't have to, their answer will let you know whether or not you're engaging, right? Do you need to engage as a realtor? Are you hearing that you need to engage as a realtor? And then from there, you can say, by the way, and Coldwell Banker, not plugging Coldwell Banker in any way, but I do work for Coldwell Banker. We have this great thing called Clients for Life, where essentially our agents can import their database into, and then from there they get it like monthly emails that they get raffles from like Amazon, Home Depot, et cetera, like gift cards. Like, hey, by the way, Anthony, you know what? Listen, I want you to win these gift cards, but I just realized I don't have your email address. I don't have your home address. What is it? And by the time I hang up that phone call, I would have genuinely checked in on my sphere. I would have found out and listened to whether or not I needed to engage as a realtor. And I would have gotten any missing information that I needed, and I would have completed my database.
Love it.
I actually suggest to my agents to do this while they go for a walk, because calling your sphere of influence is by far the hardest thing, like by far. And when COVID started and I was still back in Florida, I was calling my agents, and all of a sudden it was like, I'd rather do the dishes. And if my wife's still listening, she'd be like, he hates doing dishes. I would rather do the dishes than call, because it's a hard call, right? So I forced myself to go out for a walk and make the calls, because all of a sudden I didn't want to make calls anymore, but I'm 3 miles from my house. Well, guess what? I still have to get back home.
Mm-hmm. So Anthony, does that sound familiar? The type of calls that he's talking about? I talk about this all the time.
Gas calls. We just had this in our conversation prior to this meeting. This is awesome information. Go ahead.
So I was in this really good coaching program many years ago, and the one thing they talked about was gas calls. Give a shit. Call people. Give a shit. Which is exactly it's just a nickname for exactly what you talked about, right? Past clients, referral sources, this could be for any type of business, doesn't have to be just for realtors, is calling people in your sphere, calling your past clients, calling your referral sources, calling people you know, friends, family, giving a shit about them. And sometimes it could lead to some business. Sometimes it could lead to a referral to somebody that you know, or you could help them. And eventually that just all comes back to you in a very well-rounded sphere and business, pipeline.
And
so
really give it a shit too. Like making a call out of the genuineness of your heart saying, look, how are you? We know that you possibly had a cold or the flu, and just that goes such a long way. I mean, people don't forget that.
Let me tell you something. Piggybacking on how are you? I joke with I got to go to the DMV later because I sold my truck and I got a Tesla and I got to switch the tag from my truck to the Tesla. And I tell people all the time, start off every conversation with how are you? Not like, how are you? Can I have a Trent to cold brew, please? And it's like, no. How are you? And what you realize is the person on the other line or the other side doesn't get that very frequently. Like I get at least a free coffee a week from the Starbucks by my house. Just because I ask them how they're doing. I walk into the store. If I'm in a rush, I'll pre-order, I'll walk in. And they're like, Alex, you walked in today. Like I walk in maybe once every 3 weeks. Like they just know me from the car, just because I'm one of the few people that actually care to ask them how they're doing.
It's because everyone's on this device like this. I'm in my elevator. Everyone's like zombies, man. No one says hello or good morning.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's something for sure. So definitely working your sphere, making your calls, checking in with your people that you know and seeing how they're doing is very powerful. It's powerful in any business. Is that and I think everybody knows this. Like you said, it's not rocket science. There's no secret. There's just doing what you gotta do to get to where you want to be. Would you agree?
Hardest, easiest thing you can do. Calling your sphere is like the easiest thing. The other thing too is, and piggybacking is like, okay, what do I do with that information? So I got everybody's information. What do I do with it? And then, when you ask them, well, when you get these listings, what are you doing? And they're telling you, well, all I'm doing is, I'm putting it on social media and that's it. They're like, well, why aren't you emailing it to them? Why aren't you sending them something in the mail? And they're like, well, I don't want to be that realtor. Right? I don't want to be that realtor that only posts on social media about real estate. We can get into that too, by the way. I don't want to be the one emailing. And it's like, well, do you even know what your open rate is? And they're like, yeah, my open rate's 14%. If they even know what their open rate is. And you're like, well, that means that 86% of the emails you're sending don't even get open to begin with. Right? I'm like, I joked with my wife. I go, we live in a pretty nice neighborhood in Texas. It's crazy that we don't get postcards in the mail from realtors. And she said, well, what are you talking about? We do. I just throw them in the mail. I throw them in the garbage. I'm like, no, don't do that. I want to see them. Right. And then, so she started saving them. And then all of a sudden they stopped. Right. And then you look at, the algorithm and you look at if you look at the number of followers you have and you start looking at the engagement and the reach that it has, they don't coincide. And so agents are thinking, hey, I'm going to go and tell my sphere, I want more listings. 99% of people want more listings. But yet all they're doing to tell their sphere that they're a performer in the business, not that they're in the business of real estate. There are 65,000 agents in the business of real estate in South Florida. There are 45,000 in Dallas, but if you all you have to do is put your hand out, you're going to touch a realtor, right? But are you telling them that you're a performer? Like that you take a listing, email it, mail it, social media, you put it under contract in a day with multiple offers or whatever, postcard, email, mail it, close it. And then all of a sudden, now that you've gotten this information from your database, now you've told your sphere of influence 9 different ways that you took this listing, you put it under contract and you close it. So then in coaching, here's what I hear. If you took, I'll do the math for you, it's really easy. If every listing can represent 9 different touches to your sphere of influence, and you took 10 listings, that's 90 points of contact throughout the year to your SOI. Right? And if you know 100 people, that's like 9,000 touches to your SOI. in a year with only 10 listings.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so let me ask you, Anthony, if you reach out to your SOI 9,000 times throughout the year, and you told them that you took a listing, you put it under contract, and you closed it multiple times over, how many more listings do you think you would get?
Double, triple.
Right. So,
I mean,
it's
a numbers game. I mean, it's how much can you have in your outreach, basically.
That's right.
I think the importance of that is reminding people, because when the time comes for them to do it, or for them to refer a friend, colleague, someone they know to an agent, if you're always that one that's touching, it's the reminder, because there's a lot of agents out there, and then people are so busy. Like if you're not in their face about it, like they're going to forget. I forget all the time about things, right? Like, and I have a whole panel of lists of who I refer to for every single type of person, business issue, you know? So,
well, and
so
Melinda, there's two things to this too, right? If you look at it, if let's say, what do most agents do? They take a listing and they send just listed and just sold postcards around the list. Now, I lived in Mesquite and Davie. If I took a listing in Mesquite and I sent the just listed, just sold around my listing in Mesquite, and now I took one in Aventura Lakes, which is where I lived before. Well, Aventura Lakes doesn't care about Mesquite, and Mesquite doesn't care about Aventura Lakes. But what's the one common denominator that no matter where you go in South Florida, or no matter where you go in our metroplex here in Dallas, Dallas Fort Worth, it's your SOI, right? So it's the one common denominator that only goes with you no matter where you go. So then the feedback, and there are people right now that are saying, Alex, there's no effing way I'm going to reach out to my sphere of influence 9,000 times. My wife, who's right behind me, is one of them, because we were sitting in the car and she was like, what are you coaching these agents? You're sitting in on all these one-on-one. I go through what I termed CB9, whatever. And she's like, I can't believe you're telling them. They're going to think you're crazy. I love it because she challenges me. And I'm like, I already shared with you the postcard analogy. Postcards don't even go through. All right, she's jumping on the Peloton. So give me a second. I'm gonna pick up and move. Hold on.
Yeah.
Give me a second.
Get me worked up. I gotta get out of here.
Live in the Vidal household. Give me a second.
I love that. So as you're relocating,
sure.
I think there's a lot of people. I experienced this maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago in my business, of not wanting to be that person that shares about my business all the time, because I'm like, I don't want to be that person. And there's something about that in the mindset that has to be adjusted, I think.
Oh, it's total. Like, here's what happens, right? So agents, I don't want to be bragging. That's what they say. I don't want to be bragging about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Well, you got to remember that 90% of what you're sending isn't even getting through to begin with, right? And if that's what you're only posting about, if that's what you're only sending about, if that's what you're only talking about, then yeah, you kind of become that realtor. And so what I learned was in social media, at least, man, I'm sorry, the coffee's hitting hard right now. I love it. It's Cuban coffee. What I've learned is when I launched my podcast, The Closer Club, and I started getting like the Ryan Serhants and the Grant Cardones and all those big people on, branding agencies started reaching out, and they essentially wanted me to represent them, but for a fee, right? And I never hired any of them, but I listened to what they were telling me. And one common denominator across the board was, if you look at most realtors, they either only post about real estate or they never post about real estate, right? There's no in between. And they essentially said, look at your life and try to break it up into like 4 different verticals. Now, listen to what you guys said at the start of this conversation. Hey, I follow you. You involved with your family a lot. You're into fitness. You do all these things. And so you already know that I coach my agents based on what you see on social media. So right there, those are 3 of my verticals, right? There's the fact that I'm the coach to my agents and I'm the RVP for DFW, right? For Coldwell Banker. There's a fact that I'm an athlete and I compete in triathlons. I just had a triathlon. I had all my medals behind me before we got started, or I'm a pretend to be athlete. I'm a family man.
That's an athlete.
Yeah,
that's an athlete.
Family man. I involve my boys. I do all that. And then I have my podcast, right? And those are my 4 verticals. So I try to sprinkle in a little bit of everything that leads to those 4 things. And if you can do that, then you're not always posting about real estate.
Definitely. Because that's how people connect, right? That's how people can relate, connect, and build a rapport, because there's your sphere and they like to see what you're doing. But then there's people that you start to, I know this person from this person. And then they start to see more about you. because they may not need that real estate angle just yet, but when they do, they're already following you, they're interested in you, they can relate to you, and then that's where the opportunity comes in, at that point. So
Right.
I love that. I used to have trouble with that maybe 8 years ago or so myself, but as soon as I flipped the switch, and I always try to say, don't be afraid to talk about your business, because you need to be able to talk about your business. Don't be afraid to talk about your personal life. It's important that you humanize yourself. You make yourself relatable, right?
That's right.
And then the other interests that you have, we always talk about that. Guys, if you're listening to this either live or afterwards, I'm telling you, it's not rocket science. You don't have to recreate the wheel. You got to pick up the phone and show up on social media, show up at events, show up and just show up and be visible. Let people know what you're doing.
Here's the thing though, people want the magic pill. They want the easy answer. They want the disruptor that's in the business. And what's really interesting, I just had this conversation yesterday, is like, if everyone is going the tech route, right? Whether it's Zillow or it's Compass, we're a tech company, or we're EXP, we're cloud-based, blah, blah, blah. All this BS that we're all tech. You're no longer the disruptor, right? Now you're just like everybody else because everybody's playing in the same sandbox, right? The art that's being lost into, again, I could be completely wrong. I'm telling you my opinion. By the way, I don't know how the lighting looks. If I need to move over to this side,
fine, man. It's fine.
The one thing that's not being taught in today's day and age is the ability to have a conversation and communicate with people. That face-to-face, belly-to-belly, palm-to-palm contact, and how to do that is lost. Anthony, you referenced it earlier. You're in your elevator and everybody's looking down at their phone. They're not even paying attention to the world around them. And that ability to have that real heart-to-heart conversation with a client about what their expectations are, what their needs are, what their wants are. Just a lot of people don't do it. They just want to go in there and tell them how they're going to sell their home for the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time. Right.
Yep.
They're not building any rapport with the person on the phone.
Right.
Let me ask you one question. You mentioned mailers.
Yep.
Do you think the consistency for agents is the issue?
Consistency is always an issue in anything.
They're opting out. Most people are opting out because psychologically in a week or two or a month or 90 days, the phenomenon, they're just like, I can't do this. It's not working out. It's not for me. I'm being a nuisance. I'm asking too many questions.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I get asked a lot, Alex, how should I go about my business? And it's all about a comfort level. Like for me, when I was selling real estate, I had no money. So I started door knocking. I was a door knocker. I've already gone as an RVP. I've gone door knocking 5 times in Dallas with our agents. Like I freaking love it. And this is what you hear. You can't go door knocking. There's COVID. You can't go door knocking in COVID. And I'm like, so I go to that agent. I'm like, well, it sounds like you've knocked on a lot of doors. Well, I haven't, but you just can't go door knocking. And I'm like, well, don't tell me that because I've already gone door knocking. And I know what it's like. You knock on the door, you stand 6 feet back, leave your mask hanging on your ear, and then you let them open the door, see your face, then you mask up, right? And you can do it. And we had great success with it. And it works. And people are home right now, right? So it depends on the comfort level, if they want to go door knocking, mailers or whatever. But going back to the question, my rule of thumb is if you're going to door knock, you have to be willing to door knock every single door or the same exact door at least once a month for a year.
Wow.
Before you can come and talk to me and tell me it's not working, right? If you're going to go into a mailing campaign, one, you got to piggyback it with video. And the reason I say that is because a piece of paper doesn't translate likability and trust. And when you have 45,000 options in my metro, or you have 65,000 options in South Florida, customers have a choice with whom they're going to do business with. Again, remember, you just reach out. You can touch any realtor. You can touch a realtor, right? They're going to choose to do business with people they like and they trust. If they don't know you, how are you going to create likability and trust? You create likability and trust by video, because now they see your energy, they see your vibe, they see your aura. I believe in all that stuff. Are you an energy provider? Are you an energy drainer? What type of person are you? And the paper, the postcard, at least to a stranger, could potentially create trust. Like if you happen to be selling in the neighborhood, or you have a great year and you have stats that you can lean on, then you go that route. But here's my opinion on this. you got to be willing to mail that home every single week for the first 6 months. That's 24 mailers in a row every single week. Before you can start tapering it down a little bit to maybe twice a month for the next 6 months. Then we can talk about whether or not you should give it up. But here's what happens, Anthony. You said it best. Like, agents talk to each other, right? And they're like, door knocking doesn't work. And we coach our agents on being very careful who you take your advice from, because I learned this from a guy named Tom Bilyeu, who founded Quest Nutrition, the protein bars. Net worth is like $500 million. So I asked him, Tom, he was on my podcast. I'm like, how do you know who to take advice from? And he said two things. One is the person I'm asking advice from done what I'm asking them advice on 3 times over. So if I want to sell $10 million a year worth of real estate.
Say that one more time. One more time.
So Anthony, let's say I'm asking you advice on how to sell $10 million worth of real estate.
Yeah.
Okay. Or do $30 million in loans, whatever it is. Hey, give me some advice. You're going to give me advice. Now, how I take your advice is going to depend on 2 things. One, have you sold or have you done $30 million in loans at least 3 times over? Because 3 times over, you're not a product of the market at that point. You're not a one-hit wonder in 1 year. Like there's actual substantial credibility to the advice that you're giving me because you've done it 3 times over. Now, if you haven't, then I'm going to prod you, right? So someone tells me, hey, Alex, you shouldn't go door knocking, right? I'm going to ask them, well, how many times have you gone door knocking? And a lot of times the people that tell you that door knocking doesn't work is, I've gone door knocking a couple times. Well, what's a couple times, right? And then you start vetting out the data on which they're basing their opinion on, right? And then what you ultimately find is that a lot of people are making opinions or giving advice on data that isn't really substantiated, right? Like you just said, how many realtors will tell you mailers don't work? 90% of them.
Yeah.
But then you ask them how frequently they're doing it. Oh, I did it once a month for a quarter. Well, yeah, no wonder it didn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
I look at the mailers too, just because, being in real estate, I want to know like who's doing what, right? It's just something that you study and pay attention to. And you're right. I get 1 or 2 and then they stop. Like, cause now we just moved in our neighborhood. So like 1
or 2
neighborhood.
for what?
Where did you move to, by the way?
Lake Estates right across from Nova.
That's right. Lake Estates is great.
Yeah,
Lake Estates at Rolling Hills.
We love it. We have a golf course right in the back. The kids can run out and play. My husband's I think I'm going to take golf lessons.
Okay.
Why not? I have a golf course literally in my backyard. So
Rolling Oaks. What is it? Is it Rolling Oaks? I think.
Rolling Hills. No?
Rolling Hills. That's
right. It's where they filmed Caddyshack. Is actually that golf course.
It's a great. My old boss used to play there all the time.
Yeah, and what's cool is that since we live in that neighborhood, you don't even have to be a member of the club. You can just go out and play. So the neighbors just go, and it's like very quiet. It's a beautiful thing, but it's another reason to reach out. It's another thing. Like I want to play tennis. I need some hobbies now. Like I've been working too much. I'm like the mom and the business owner. I'm like, I need some hobbies. So I'm like, I think I'm gonna do the tennis and the golf.
My wife picked up tennis right before we moved, and then still playing here. So all our friends here are pretty much from tennis.
From tennis. That's cool. Yeah. And that's how you build, right? Picking up a hobby or going all in on something is another way to build a sphere, like add to your sphere. Where do these people come from? It's such an important thing, but it all ties back to people give up too quick. People don't want to do something that makes them uncomfortable. And that's all in the mindset kind of.
Let's talk about that. Great segue. I swear to God, we couldn't have planned this better.
Yeah.
So the thing is this, right? The giving up too quick for sure. The uncomfortableness has a lot to do with just not doing it. And the example that I give agents all the time is, do you remember, let's say you went on, I actually just did a video on this. Let's say you've done 100 listings, done 50 listings, you've done 20 listings. If you get called for a listing presentation today, you're going to feel really good about it. If you've done 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 1,000 listing presentations, you're going to feel great because you've done so many. But do you remember your first listing presentation? And they always say, oh my God, it was so terrible. And I'm like, yeah. And now look at you. You didn't stop because it was terrible. You just had to get through that. You had to get through that thing. Like your podcast now probably didn't start with you guys having mics and having the professional setup. Mine did. Mine started with myself. It's still on my cell phone. But with my buddy Richard Greenfield holding it and literally going like this, between me and my guest. And then it eventually
Wow.
got to sideways. And then it got to putting my logo on the corner, to then moving my logo to the middle, to then, having lapel mics and having a tripod and all this crazy stuff. But I sucked at the beginning.
Yeah.
Now I think I'm pretty good. Right? That's not being cocky. I just think I'm good. Right. So you have that, but it's time in the saddle. And the mindset thing, the very first thing I coach in my coaching program is mindset. Because you could be the best loan officer, you could be the best attorney, you could be the best whatever, the best realtor, the best mom, the best dad, the best athlete, best business owner, whatever. If you don't want to get out of bed in the morning, nothing else matters. Like nothing, right? And what you learn, and what I've learned by my podcast has been a life changer for me. What I've learned by virtue of my podcast is not that these super successful people that have hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars, it's not that they're always positive. God knows I'm not always positive, right?
Yeah.
The difference is, do I have tools and do I have systems in place that I work on a daily basis, so that when I do find myself in that slump for a second, am I there for a day? Am I there for a couple hours? Am I there for a week? Am I there for a month? Am I there for a year? Right. And so what everybody, these super successful, the one common denominator that they have is they have a system in place to get out of that slump right away and be in that positive mindset. You got to work, if you're just tuning in now, you didn't see my race medals, but you don't show up to a half Ironman and expect to race. You put in the time, you plan, right? You train for it. It's the same thing. You got to train. You got to have a system in place for your mindset. You can do it. You can actually change your mindset by working on it.
Amen.
It's a muscle, just like anything else. Your brain needs to be
stimulated,
reminded. Like, how there's muscle memory, like if you're out of it for a while, you have to be reminded, put things in place to keep you on track, like infrastructure, or if you have certain quirks, build stuff out to keep you on track for that. Whether it's, if you don't like to make calls because there's something about calling, there's a lot of things you can do to resolve that, but making sure you just start calling is really the only thing. And so how do you make sure you start calling? You create the time blocks, you have accountability partners, you put yourself out there, you tell everyone, this is what I'm going to do. Like sometimes I will literally go out and tell the world on social media, in person, whatever, this is what I'm going to start doing from now on, because I need to start doing it. So I'm going to tell you what I'm doing it, because then I have to do it, right? Whatever it is. So you got to find ways to hack until it becomes second nature, until it becomes more comfortable.
I'll give you a couple hacks. There's a great TED Talk by a guy named Sean Achor, Achor. It's about happiness at work. It's hilarious. Okay. Super funny. It's only 12 minutes long. And I've kind of taken what he talks about in that podcast and kind of changed it around a little bit to what suited me. And essentially what it's turned into for me is what I call a 5, 10, or 25 rule. And essentially it's this: on a great day, I write down, pen to the paper, and there's a whole psychology as to why you should do pen to the paper, but pen to the paper, 5 things for which I'm grateful for. Okay. And if you don't repeat yourself, like, I'm not always grateful for my job, then I'm not always grateful for my family, my wife, my kids, you really start to analyze the world around you for the good that's happening. Right. So one day I had a really crappy day a few years ago, and I don't even remember what it was, but I was the nail, not the hammer. Right. And so I sit down and I start to write down the things I'm grateful for. And I wrote down the 5, and I'm like, yeah, no, this didn't help me today. Right. And I kept writing, and I got to about 25 things in my day for which I could find myself to be grateful for. And what I realized was that there was a lot happening to be thankful and grateful for in my day. I just wasn't paying attention to it because I was paying attention to the one bad thing that happened. It was renting all the real estate in my head. So I had my kids doing it, and like anything, it's hard to do every single day for years and years and years. That's one of the reasons why I love my coaching program, because anytime I do it to them, I do it back on with them. So I have my 14-year-old doing it. And he's like, so Daddy, let me ask you a question. All right, on a great day, I do 5. On a bad day, I do 25. What if I had an okay day? And I was like, well, what do you think you should do? He goes, how about 10? I'm like, okay. So, what we work on is 5 on a great day, 10 on an okay day, 25 on a bad day. And you can see a fundamental shift in our agents when they do this. So the way I do it, my 8-session program, and it's not for sale, by the way. It's not like I'm here trying to pitch it. I don't sell it. It's just for an agent. So don't think I'm saying it because of that. I'm not. There's no link you can go and get it. Sorry.
After this, we've got a link here.
you gotta come to Dallas and work for Coldwell Banker.
Yeah.
But essentially, we do it every 2 weeks. So after when we're going into session 3, which is 4 weeks in, you can tell. You can tell the agents that have been doing it. You start to see a fundamental shift. You start to see the people around you who are energy suckers. You're either like 2 magnets that are opposite that just completely push each other apart, or then you find energy providers, and then you're like the magnet that glues you together. And it's really cool. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
That's awesome. We started doing that every night, asking my older son. My little guy is still not there yet, but what are the 3 things you're grateful for? And we asked for 3. And at first he's like, why do I have to do this? But now he's getting it and he's doing it. And I really think it's a great, I wish I would have done things like that when I was a kid. So it's cool that we can instill these things in our kids at the earlier stages, so they'll be so much more equipped to handle life later on when they're out in the world, right? So and it's a reminder for ourselves too. Sometimes I feel like I'm teaching it to my kids, I'm talking about it on the show, but then I'm so busy or so tired that I forget to do these things for myself sometimes. So this is always a good reminder for me to sit down and have that moment of gratitude, right?
And you're seeing them progressively get better and better. These agents.
You can tell who does and who doesn't. So we had one in our Flower Mound office. Doesn't matter. You guys don't know what Flower Mound is. And at the beginning, she's like, "Oh, Alex, why are you making me do this?" Yeah. And what was interesting, by the time we got to session 4 of the program, she's like, "I had to get my husband doing it because every time he just comes in and wants to dump on me about work, and I'm like, go do your gratitude right now. I don't want to, And so you see it, you see, yesterday we had 2 coaching sessions yesterday, and one of the agents was like, my husband, he works for some loan company. Maybe it was PRMG, maybe it was Caliber, I don't know. Branch manager down here. She's like, man, he just comes home and unloads on me about his day. And I started, rather than just being like, I got to listen to him again about these, clients. It was more like, well, I'm happy. I'm grateful that I'm the person that he wants to come and talk to, right? I'm grateful that he's got a job that he can complain about, right? That provides for our family. I'm grateful that he got home safely to be able to tell me about what happened at work, right? So you definitely can see it, no doubt.
The perspective, right? So going from good to great, that's the title of the episode, just because I feel like you all, through your experience, you've definitely seen agents make the transition to become great, or some just stay where they're at in their own way. So what do you think it is? Obviously we know there's things you got to do, but what are not the secret sauce, but what are the tools or the strategies that they do implement in their lives? What are you seeing with your agents now that is really helping them pivot? We know gratitude, right? Follow through, making your calls, but what else can we tell these agents that are watching that want to
am I going to disappoint you if I tell you there is nothing more? I mean,
there's nothing more, right? There's no secret sauce, right?
The thing is, it's just, you got to realize agents aren't even doing the basic fundamentals.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, they're successful in doing it, right? Because either the market's great or they just know a lot of people and it just falls on their lap and all that. And it's and it works for them. But here's what I have found. All right. It's 4 things. The ones that do this, they work on their mindset every day. They work on getting their database together and actually working their database on a daily basis. They work on building their database because people in their database die, become realtors, move out of town, et cetera, right? And they have an outside source of business. Either they have leads coming in from Zillow, Realtor.com, whatever. They have a farm area that they're constantly working, et cetera. If you can focus on those 4 things religiously, right, then I will tell you that you will go from being a good agent to being a great agent. Now, what happens? there's some unlocks that happen along the way. Like you get really busy and all of a sudden you want to become a control freak and continue trying to control all your deals. Cool. You can be that person, but you're not going to go good to great. So you got to hire an assistant, right? So then we get, well, Alex, I can't afford an assistant, or I don't know. Can you give me the job description that so-and-so is using for their assistant? Like, well, it's different for everybody. So if you're looking at this, trying to figure out, one, I can't afford an assistant, and what would I even have an assistant do? Very easy. For the next 2 weeks, anytime you're doing something you don't want to be doing or that you don't like doing, write it down. Because in 2 weeks, you're going to have your assistant's job description.
Done for
Simple,
sure.
right? So then you have, all right, well, I can't afford an assistant. I can't afford $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year. Okay. What can you afford? Can you afford $500 a month? Can you afford $1,000 a month? What can you afford? Oh, yeah, Alex, I can afford $1,000 a month. Okay. Well, $20 an hour, that's 50 hours. Right? I think, is that the math, right? I think it's about right. Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden you just gave yourself 50 hours of time a month for $1,000. What agent, what can you do if I gave you back 50 hours of your day, of your month? It's an entire work week, right? So then you start getting into the unlocks there. Then you have unlocks like, well, Alex, I don't trust transaction coordinators. I don't trust assistants because I don't want them, if they drop the ball, then it's going to cost me money. It's going to do this, it's going to do that. Well, then you just got to work on the systems in place that don't allow for that to happen. Check in with them every single morning, so on and so, whatever it may be. But it's not, this is what I keep trying to tell people. This is not a complicated business. It's just doing the minutia, or not the minutia, but the follow-up, right? Mm-hmm. Things that get you in front of a buyer or a seller 80% of the time. It's doing that on a consistent basis. And that is so freaking hard. It's crazy. And the reason agents have this, up and down roller coaster is they get 3 or 4 deals under contract. And then all of a sudden they're like staring at the 3 or 4 deals, and they're waiting for the 3 or 4 deals to close. They're babysitting the deal. They're thinking about it all day long. All right, great. I got 3 or 4 deals. I'm babysitting. Boom. They all close. Now I'm back at the bottom. Now
that's the roller coaster, right?
Yeah. Then they start prospecting. They start doing what they're supposed to be doing. Right. And then all of a sudden they get 3 or 4 deals under contract again, close those. And then here's that roller coaster. So I wish I had a better, I wish I had a better answer for you.
No, but that's what I wanted. That's kind of what I wanted to hear, because we kind of, what you've said, we've talked about, we've had show on each one of the 4 points that you've talked about. We've had shows about, mindset and all that stuff. And the reality is and sometimes they need to hear like in a different presentation, right? Because it is what it is, guys. There's no secret sauce. You really just need to do like it. In law school, they always told us, you don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to create a brand new form, right? For this document you need when you have it in your templates, right? So find a good resource and use that. You've been given, whether through our show, through coaches, through brokerages, there's so many ways you can get information on how to excel in this business. You just got to stop and do it.
And the other thing too is
keep doing it consistently so you don't feel like this, right?
Do you think, Alex, that I feel like people become very complacent. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's a seller's market right now. I'm doing very well. I'm kicking ass. Well, okay, what happens when that turns and rates go up next year? You know what I mean? Then what? You're not, you're not making 6 figures at that point. You don't have your database built out. You don't have the mindset because now you're in a buyer's market. Yep. Your farming area is still there. So I don't think they're forecasting. And that's the way my mind works is, all right, where am I going to be in 5 years? I need to understand tech. I need to adapt to the situation. I need to organize my database to get to that level. How do you train that?
So you train that's 100% right. Right. It's like right now, if you can fog a mirror, you could do business. No, that's actually not true because it's very hard to get a deal. There's not a lot of those things.
What was that? Fog a mirror? What? Hey, man.
I'm joking. I'm totally joking. People are going to think I'm the biggest a-hole. No. I was like 04, 05, 06. You could definitely fog a mirror and do a real estate transaction. Right. Here now, it's funny because I tell our agents now that to be able to do the record numbers that we're doing, when there's limited inventory, you're fighting 30 buyers on one property, to be able to pull record numbers is phenomenal, right? And so what we try to coach them on is, okay, that's great. This is where you are today, but a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, where do you want to be, right? And I just kind of use personal examples. I was at Related ISG back in South Florida. I was ecstatic. Like the ownership group is great. It's a great brokerage. I loved it there. I was ecstatic there. But in terms of where we lived in Davie, we lived in Mystique, loved it. My boys loved it. They had a soccer field in the back. Like everything was great. And I actually learned that this is where happiness can be an anchor, because even though I was ecstatic with everything that was going on in my life or complacent, it didn't play a role in where I wanted to be in my career and personally in a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. Right. And so you got to be looking at your business. And yes, today is great. But if it does slow down in a year from now, what systems, what foundation do you have in place right now to make that happen? Because it will eventually happen. I don't know if it's next year, if it's 5 years, I don't know. But do you have a foundation? Because then all of a sudden, if you can do it now in a great market, you may have so much business coming in that now you are controlling the business instead of the business controlling you. And when you can have that unlock, man, now it's like game over at that point.
Autopilot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think almost to the point where some of the agents are content and happy doing what they're doing and don't want to grow or are fearful of growth.
I don't think they even think about it. I think they're just in the motion and trying to make a lot of people, I think, in any business, not just that, they're just in doing the motions, what they do, make the money and try to get the next deal and just focusing on like one thing at a time versus projecting and planning ahead and then executing on the plan.
Right. You do have agents that are like, hey, I'm cool making 200 grand a year. Like I'm good. I don't need to work. And then that's a different conversation, right? Okay, great. If you're making 200 grand a year, wouldn't you like to have more time with your family or whatever? Well, let's work on getting you more efficient or doing higher volume transactions so you don't have to do as many deals, but make the same amount of money. And you do have agents, Melinda, as you said, that just are in their mind, they have an idea of what they want to do, but they're just, hey, I'm just trying to get as many deals under contract. They're always going, right?
Too much, that saying, working in the business versus on the business.
Yeah.
I think sometimes agents don't look at themselves as a business because they're just that one person doing that service, right? But it is a business and you need to treat it like that, which is why we always talk about importance of planning and business strategies, and et cetera, and systems and teams, because even if you're by yourself, you have your affiliates, your partners, your referral partners that should be part of your team. You can get a TC that you only pay when you close. Like you need to use and leverage as much as you can to free up time to work on your business.
I'll tell you, one of the greatest eye-opening experiences that I'm doing with my boys now. I have a 24-year-old. That's how I got in the business. I had him when I was 19. Started off as the secretary to Mike Pappas, the owner of Kai's. Like I was literally a secretary. Wow. And then, went through the ranks there. And then I have my 14-year-old and I have my 11-year-old twins. And I'm trying to work on bringing them closer to me because they're growing up and they're starting to talk to girls and they're doing all this stuff. And two of my younger ones, my 24-year-old's living his life, right? But my younger ones, the 14-year-old and one of my twins are heavily into sports. The other one's not into sports. So with him, I'm like, well, what does he like to do? He loves to make money. He loves to buy gadgets. He's always wanted to try the newest tech thing or whatever. So we launched a lifestyle brand called LTFS, Life's Too Effing Short. And your effing could be freaking flipping or the real word, right? And it's hats, shirts, so we're just starting to launch.
I saw that. That's cool.
Yeah, we haven't even gone really public with the site because we're trying to, we're working on. We've had 40 orders in a week, which is great.
That's awesome.
So my son is like, wait. So we sell the hat for $29.99, and we charge $4.90 for shipping. So it's like 35. Let's say it's $35. Like, yeah. He's like, should we get to keep the $35? I'm like, no. What did the hat cost us? Well, the hat cost us $15. Okay. Well, what's this $1.33? That he's like, well, because I was showing him like the breakdown, and I'm like, that's what the credit card company charges us, so somebody can pay through the internet. Well, I didn't know that. I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, Luke. So we got to get this to someone, right? Well, how are we going to get it to them? Well, we got to put it in a box. Well, what does that box cost? Right? And then it's like, well, we don't just put it in a box because what if the box gets wet? It's got to go in a bag, right? So then it's like, well, how much does the bag cost? Well, it was $1. We got it down to 17 cents. Right. And so like all of a sudden he knows that he goes, yeah, I know now that when I order something, they're not keeping all the money. Like here I am thinking they're making all this money, and I'm showing them the P&L and the budgets and
Awesome.
they're the ones stuffing the boxes with the hats and sealing the bags and doing all that.
Love
To
it.
show them that, because it's something that I think a lot of people don't think about. They just think about their income, but they're not looking at the cost of actually running their business, right? So it's cool. It's cool. And by the way, take Real Estate 101. Every night when I'm in bed, I'm DMing 3 people through Instagram. Hey, check out what I'm doing with my boys. And that's it. I mean, that's all I do, right? At literally midnight when everybody else is sleeping, I'm DMing 3 people. That's a goal. 101, Real Estate 101.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. Definitely I think I'm gonna park for when my kids are older, because I love that idea. They see us doing different businesses all the time, so now I want them to have a little something too. It's funny how they copy to what we do, so it's important to have that example, that training. I love it. I love all of what we spoke about today. This was excellent. Anthony, you want to add in any final thoughts?
No, man, I could speak to Alex for another 5 hours. You forgot you forgot Printful, or whomever's printing the actual t-shirt or hat.
Yeah. Well, you have the cost of the hat. Yeah, you have the cost of the hat. And so, depending on that, and then it's like, well, some hats are $14, but some are 20, depending on quantities. And it's like, well, hey, and, they're like, oh, so then they're like, oh, you've made $2,000. I'm like, no, I haven't. Then I'm showing them the Excel spreadsheet. And it's like, no, it's actually, we're still in the hole quite an amount.
We're in the red.
We're in the red.
Funny stuff, man. It's fascinating. It really is fascinating. And by the way, maybe we end with this, I don't know, but like, what a fascinating time to be alive, right? Think about this. I'm a real estate guy. I've been in real estate since I'm 19 years old, from secretary to telemarketer to recruiting director to sales coach to sales to manager, vice president, president, whatever, right? Like all this stuff. I'm a real estate guy. But here I am launching a lifestyle and apparel brand with my 11-year-old boys and my 14-year-old and my 24-year-old who's going to sell it too, because he's got an online business, right? That I've learned literally through the internet.
That's awesome, man.
And there's no excuses. There's really no excuse to go out there and try to learn something.
Oh, definitely. It's amazing the resources we have at our fingertips if you go out and look for it. Right. Sure. And nowadays it's super easy.
You have a supercomputer right here.
Yep. My son's like asking me every day, ask your phone. Like, I don't remember the last question, but it's like whatever, like about a planet or about like, is a spider an insect? Because he's telling me a spider is not an insect. I'm like, I think it is. He goes, no, it's not, because insects have 6 legs. Spiders have 8 legs. I'm like, okay, he's like, ask your phone. I asked my phone, lo and behold, he was right.
How crazy is that?
But imagine like at 6 years old, I had paper encyclopedias, that had to get updated, No
cameras, no phones. It was great back then.
It's definitely a different time. There's the good and the bad, right?
People were saying hello, that's for sure.
Definitely. Now people are walking with their heads down, There's actually a problem with people's necks nowadays because of that texting neck of like looking down. Yeah.
Oh, Anthony, that's very real. There was, I remember, and I can't remember where I saw it. I actually had Tom Ferry on, and Tom Ferry asked me about it, and I couldn't find the article, but I found where grocery stores are putting like the stuff that they really want to sell. They put it at like lower levels.
Way. Are you serious?
Where's your shopping list? It's on your phone.
Shit.
So you're staring at your phone as you're pushing the cart. You're staring down at your phone. So they try to put it at like down, like halfway down.
Wow.
Because that's.
But I'm sure, like 10 years ago, or maybe more, the money spot was like at eye level, right?
Now it's at the bottom.
So that's a perfect example of being able to reflect on how things are being done now and the times we are in, and to adjust, right? So, for example, Anthony and I started with doing live shows for our show. We were in the pandemic. Everybody was home. We started this right before the pandemic started. And now we realize live is not as effective as it used to be. So we're going to go to pre-recorded starting next year, and we're going to adjust and change to make it more efficient and to make it more.
I'll give you a tip, because here's probably what you're finding. Okay. What's finding is, and it's happening with me, it happened with me like around episode 35, 40. Facebook, because I only film live,
Okay.
like for the most part. Facebook was starting to treat me like a media company. And so, because I was producing so much content, that I'd have Ryan Serhant on. And the first time I had Ryan Serhant on, I had 15,000 views organically on my page. Then I had him on again and I had like 200. And I'm like, all right, something's up. And so what I do is I still film it live. I save the content. I then put it to my business page and then I boost it on my business page. And then I post it to YouTube and all that. So I keep the live. Mm-hmm. And the only reason I keep the live is because what I have found when it's pre-recorded, people later are like, hey, can you edit out that? Like, hey, could you edit out that comment where, real estate's so hot right now, if you fog a mirror, you can do a deal, right? Like, can you edit that out? I said it. It is what it is. I've been saying it for years, by the way. And it was in 04, 05, 06, you could fog a mirror and do real estate. Yeah. It was that easy, and just that's the beauty of going live. Like, it's just, there's no second takes. Right. And then you can take the content and then, put it everywhere else. But it's going to happen. It's just Facebook's probably looking at you guys and saying you're pumping out so much content that you're a media company, and they're going to.
Because we're past episode 60. For those that are like newer subscribers, we have you can watch us streaming on Facebook. You can pop on Zoom and actually ask questions in the chat if you'd like. We have our content on YouTube, and we are loading everything up on Spotify as well. So we are having it anywhere we can, whatever is easiest for you to do. But hoping that you guys got some amazing nuggets from today. Remember, there's no secret sauce. I think that's the conclusion.
Last question: you running Miami Marathon this year?
No idea, man.
Maybe I'll see you, man.
Maybe. I mean, that means that's a flight down. So we'll see. I was going to come down for the Escape to Miami if they had it this year. It's such a fun race, but they didn't do it. So we may. We'll see.
Okay. All right, man.
Stop. All right. Well,
awesome,
thank you so
man.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. This was awesome.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. See you next week. Have an amazing day. Bye.
Bye.